Hi. The other day I saw a meme on Facebook that was from the first Outlander season. It had the group of men with Claire riding back to Castle Leoch after they had found her. There was a question: could you live in the 18th century? I belong to a couple of historical recreation groups and have an idea of some skills that you would need to accomplish this. But it made me wonder, what exactly would this all entail? Even if some hunky Highlander was involved, could I do it? Like I said, I have learned some old-timey crafts, but we are talking everyday life, like forever. Not a weekend stint in the park with the porta potties and other recreators. We are talking for the rest of your life. The question just kept niggling in the back of my brain, and I actually found a book on Amazon, The Cottage Diaries, My Year in the 18th Century by Fiona Houston. Fiona had the same question, and she wrote of her experiment to immerse herself in the 1790s lifestyle for an entire year. She lived in an outbuilding that she had near her home in Scotland. The book is her diary of her adventures, with recipes, gardening notes, and skills she learned and used to survive her year. This was a great read. It was an inspiration, and it just made me even more curious how this could be done. No electricity, no water, and no underwear. That's right, folks, no underwear. That came a little bit later on the timeline. Now, if you wanted to do the same sort of thing, for me it would have to be more when Jamie and Claire went to the U.S., because I live in the States, west central Wisconsin to be exact. So I'm going to have to use what I have and know. Don't get me wrong, I love Scotland. My father was born there and moved here in his 30s. We had planned to take a trip back this spring, but there was extenuating circumstances, and hopefully they'll be on our next year's schedule. Now let's just start thinking this through. Home would probably be a small log cabin for the majority of the folks. Remember the no running water thing? So it needs to be near water. No one wants to fetch water with pails from a creek 3 miles away. Cooking would be done in a fireplace, which would also be the entire heating system for the house and water used. The heated water could include bathing, laundry, and cooking, which we will get more in depth a little later. Other things to think about: no phones. If you needed to talk with someone, there was a long walk involved, which brings me to another point. Most homesteaders did not usually settle down near a town or even a neighbor. Even on Fraser's Ridge, there was quite a hike between some of the homes. It could be a several-mile walk to get a cup of sugar from your neighbor, or a several-day travel or weeks to the next town. I love living in the country. Where I live, I am 9 miles to the nearest small town and more than 20 to the next largest town. Now I realize when you get out into Wyoming and the Dakotas, this is peanuts, but to a great share, it is sheer craziness around here. I love my little bit of country. On a usual day, probably 20 cars pass my house. At night, I can see the stars and hear owls and coyotes. In the spring, I can listen to the frogs in the pond. I enjoy the quiet and solitude. Don't get me wrong, I have my people I like to hang out with, but coming home to peace and quiet is very rewarding. Speaking of quiet, there are also no television, computers, internet, or video games in the 18th century. What did these people do with their time? What an interesting question. I can't wait to find out. Would you like to find out if you could live in the 18th century? Join me on my quest. If you found this thought-provoking and want to see more, please like and subscribe if you want to join my quest in search of life in the 18th century. If you are interested in more information and supplies for 18th century living, there are links below in the comments, and check out my website for a plethora of Scottish history, culture, and Gaelic information. Thank you.